The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule, and that's all the rules there are. I mean, if you buy things for far below what they're worth, and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money.
Warren, what do you consider the most important quality for an investment manager?
It's a temperamental quality, not an intellectual quality. You don't need tons of IQ in this business. I mean, you have to have enough IQ to get from here to downtown Omaha, but you do not have to be able to play three-dimensional chess or be in the top leagues in terms of bridge playing or something of the sort. You need a stable personality. You need a temperament that neither derives great pleasure from being with the crowd or against the crowd. Because this is not a business where you take polls, it's a business where you think. And Ben Graham would say that you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people agree with you. And you're not right or wrong because 1,000 people disagree with you. You're right because your facts and your reasoning are right.
Warren, what do you do that's different than 90% of the money managers who are in the market?
Certainly most of the professional investors focus on what the stock is likely to do in the next year or two, and they have all kinds of arcane methods of approaching that, but they do not really think of themselves as owning a piece of a business. The real test of whether you're investing from a value standpoint or not is whether you care whether the stock market is open tomorrow. If you're making a good investment in a security, it shouldn't bother you if they close down the stock market for 5 years. All the ticker tells me is the price. And I can look at the price occasionally to see whether the price is outlandishly cheap or outlandishly high, but prices don't tell me anything about a business. Business figures themselves tell me something about a business, but the price of a stock doesn't tell me anything about a business. I would rather value a stock or a business first and not even know the price, so that I'm not influenced by the price in establishing my valuation, and then look at the price later to see whether it's way out of line with what my value is.
How can you stay away from Wall Street?
Well, if I were on Wall Street, I'd probably be a lot poorer. You get overstimulated in Wall Street, and you hear lots of things, and you may shorten your focus, and a short focus is not conducive to long profits. And here I can just focus on what businesses are worth. And I don't need to be in Washington to figure out what the Washington Post newspaper is worth, and I don't need to be in New York to figure out what some other company is worth. It's an intellectual process. And the less static there is in that intellectual process, really the better off you are.
What is the intellectual process?
The intellectual process is defining your area of competence in valuing businesses, and then within that area of competence, finding whatever sells at the cheapest price in relation to value. And there are all kinds of things I'm not competent to value, but there are a few that I am competent to value.
Have you ever bought a technology company?
No, I really haven't.
In 30 years of investing, not one?
I haven't understood any of them.
So you haven't ever owned, for example, IBM?
Never owned IBM. Marvelous company. I mean, it's a sensational company, but I haven't owned IBM.
And so here is this technological revolution going on, and you're not going to be a participant.
Gone right past me.
Is that all right with you?
It's okay with me. I don't have to make money in every game. I mean, I don't know what cocoa beans are going to do. There are all kinds of things I don't know about. And that may be too bad, but why should I know all about them? I haven't worked that hard on them. In the securities business, you literally every day have thousands of the major American corporations offered you at a price that changes daily. And you don't have to make any decisions. You have to make, nothing is forced upon you. There are no called strikes in the business. The pitcher just stands there and throws balls at you. And if you're playing real baseball and it's between the knees and the shoulders, you either swing or you get a strike called on you. If you get too many called on you, you're out. In the securities business, you sit there and they throw U.S. Steel at 25 and they throw General Motors at 68. And you don't have to swing at any of them. They may be wonderful pitches to swing at, but if you don't know enough, you don't have to swing. And you can sit there and watch thousands of pitches, and finally you get one right there where you want it, something that you understand, and then you swing. And
so you might not swing for 6 months.
You might not swing for 2 years.
Isn't that boring?
It would bore most people, and certainly boredom is a problem with most professional money managers. If they try to sit out an inning or two, not only do they get somewhat antsy, but their clients are starting to yell, swing you, well, from the stands, and that's very tough for people to do.
Warren, your approach seems so simple. Why doesn't everybody do it?
Well, I think partly because it is so simple. But the academics, for example, focus on all kinds of variables. Partly because
by academics, you mean professors of
right,
finance?
Yeah, the data's there.
In business school?
Sure, and the data's there. So they focus on whether if you buy stocks on Tuesday and sell them on Friday, you're better off, or if you buy them in election years and sell them in other years, you're better off, or if you buy small companies. There are all these variables because the data are there, and they've learned how to manipulate data. And as a friend of mine says, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And once you have these skills, you just are dying to utilize them in some way, but they aren't important. If I were being asked to participate in a business opportunity, would it make any difference to me whether I bought it on a Tuesday or a Saturday or an election year or something? It's not what a businessman thinks about in buying businesses. So why think about it when buying stocks? Because stocks are just pieces of businesses.
Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger, if you were about to start all over again, what profession would you choose and why?
I would choose what I do because A, I have fun at it. I'm reasonably good at it. I meet a lot of interesting people through it. No heavy lifting. It fits me. But that's not advice for you. I mean, you have to find out what's your passion in life. You know, it's a terrible mistake to kind of sleepwalk through your life because unless Shirley MacLaine's right, you know, it's the only one you're going to have. And I was very lucky in that I found my passion early. I mean, that's not easy. You know, that takes some luck. It just so happened my dad was in a business that had a very small office and he had a bunch of books down there. And when I would go down there on Saturday or after school, I would start reading those books and it turned me on. And this was before Playboy actually existed. And so, you know, that was just plain lucky, you know. If he'd been a minister, I'm not so sure I would have gotten quite as enthused about visiting the office. But that's the way to go. And I can't prescribe that for you, but I can tell you that if you're going through the motions in life, you're doing something. Now, obviously, if you need the job you have and you can't make a change and your kids have to eat and all of that, you deal with realities like that. But when you're in a position to make choices, you know, I always tell the kids that come visit me, I tell them, go to work for an organization you admire or an individual you admire. That means that many of them become self-employed, but the idea, you know, you can't get a bad result. I went to work for Ben Graham when I was 24. I only worked for him for less than 2 years, but I jumped out of bed every day in the morning. I was excited about what I was going to do. I was learning things. I was with a man I admired. I never asked my salary when I took that job. I moved to New York City and found out what my salary was when I got the check. So just be sure you get the right spouse. That's enormously important. You know, as Charlie says, the problem, you know, is that we talk about that fellow that spent 20 years looking for the perfect woman and then he found her and unfortunately she was looking for the perfect man. So you may have a problem in that respect. But it's enormously important who you marry. I mean, it's a huge decision. You know, if you're lucky in a couple things like that, you're going to have a happy life, and you're going to behave better as you go along. I mean, it's a lot easier to behave well when things are going your way and you're enjoying your work and you're thinking about things every day that are the kind of things you like to think about. And Charlie has a lot better advice than I have on that. Go to it.
Well, of course, you'll do better if you develop a passion for something in which you have a considerable aptitude. I think if Warren had gone into the ballet, nobody would have ever heard of him.
Well, I think they'd have heard of me, just in a different way, Charlie. Well, the chances are, if you find something that turns you on, you probably do have some talent for it. I mean, I don't think I could have gotten turned on by ballet.